So viruses basically contain two major parts. You've got the outer part, which is the protein, and there's different kinds of proteins. Sometimes those proteins help the virus attach to cells. And then you have the instructions that this virus is going to use to trick the cells into making more viruses. So when you get sick with a viral infection, what that is your cells having been hijacked by the virus DNA, so that's just instructions. So this molecule goes into your cells, causes your cells to start producing virus particles, and then the cells get sick and die. So the proteins that are on the outside of the virus don't actually really make you sick. They just help the virus attach, and they sort of identify the virus. So if this is one of your cells, perfectly healthy and happy, and a virus shows up, it's going to use these little proteins to attach to receptors on your cells. So your cells may or may not have those receptors. And unfortunately, with the coronavirus that we're experiencing now, a lot of our cells have those receptors, and so many different cells have the receptors that it's kind of hard to predict what your symptoms are going to be. But once that virus attaches, it makes the cell pretty sick. And the way it does that, and so what's actually happening in the cell is the information, genetic information that's in the middle of the virus is going to enter the cell, and then the cell is no longer going to be doing its usual cellular functions. Instead, what it's going to be doing is starting to manufacture viruses. And so that virus info goes into the cell, and then that tricks the cell into making more viruses. So now you start to have viruses being made. Okay, so that's sort of the beginning of being sick with a virus. But what's going to happen, and what gets really bad for your cells, is that eventually that cell is going to die. And the reason it dies is because the virus particles are going to explode out of that cell. And so now you've got a cell that's produced tons of virus particles because the virus made it. So the original virus that infected this cell has now tricked the cell into making a whole bunch more viruses. And those viruses are now going to go around in your body and make you even sicker. And so a lot of the symptoms that we experience when we get sick with a virus is just from that explosion of the cells and then the inflammatory response that results. And the fact that these cells are now dead. Okay, so if you get just a little bit sick, you may not have as many virus particles being produced. If you get really, really sick, there's a decent chance that your immune system can't keep up and more virus particles get produced. So how does our immune system work? Our immune system has evolved to identify proteins. Okay, so it recognizes proteins. Now, our cells also have proteins, and your virus looks at your cell's proteins and says, oh, these are okay. But then the immune system cell will look at the COVID protein and say, oh, that is not allowed. Okay, so that's how the immune system works. It just relies on protein.